No, the mystique hasn't died off. The hype is real, and so is the disrespect.
You are Locked On UCLA, your daily podcast on the UCLA Bruins. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to this edition of the Locked On UCLA podcast. I'm your host, Zach Anderson-Yoxsimer. Thanks for making this show your first listen each and every day. It's free wherever you get your podcast, and it's available on YouTube. Like, comment, subscribe. Thanks for your support. This episode is brought to you by none other than FanDuel. As I've been gone and out of town, apparently everybody's taking shots at UCLA. Anywhere from the Big Ten media poll, from the own Locked On Sports Network account, taking absolute headshots for no reason. What do I mean? Let's get down to business today, because on the eve of the Big Ten media days, we have our Big Ten media poll and some absolute quote-unquote social media violence from this network's own national account, thinking that UCLA's national brand awareness has been on the decline, along with Notre Dame and Nebraska, whose actual brand has been on the decline. But UCLA, I like to beg to differ. Let's talk about it, right? One, if you look at the Big Ten media poll, which is actually not really a poll, it's just a poll released by a paper out in Cleveland, Ohio. Take it what you will. UCLA is predicted to be 15th out of 18 teams. Now, I'm not going to say they're going to win the conference. And with so many teams, you're not going to play everybody, but they're not the 15th best team. I think they're going to do a little better than that. And I think the Midwest is going to have another thing coming to them if they think UCLA is that far down the standings. But we'll find out, and we'll see if I'm wrong. For the national awareness, UCLA is only on the upswing, right? Yes, all the jokes have been poked towards lack of attendance in football and all those other things. But if you talk about national brand awareness, national championships in all sports, you talk about a team with a coach that is literally bringing them back into the limelight with spring games, getting them back in the recruiting, top threes, final threes, decisions by kids who are some of the best recruits in the 25 class, and UCLA is amongst that final three. The mystique, hey, what were some of the best March Madness games in recent years? UCLA in the tournament, if you're talking basketball. UCLA women, they've been in the limelight nationally, talking and playing some of the best teams. This is a program, an athletics institution that is not on the decline. So what is this fallen franchise's stupid tweet that the Locked On Podcast Network twittered, or X, whatever the heck it is at the moment? They talked about the Cowboys, the Lakers. All right, whatever. You got the Yankees and the Canadians. Okay, cool. Red Wings, Notre Dame, New York Knicks, who haven't done anything in a hot minute. Nebraska. What has Nebraska been relevant in anything, literally? Sorry, they're super nice people in terms of all their fan base. Awesome. They have not been relevant. All right, Notre Dame, cool. UCLA, the Patriots. That's a different joke. All right, whatever. UCLA, have they lost their mystique? No, it's one of the premier institutions in the country. They play in one of the most iconic stadiums that, like ESPN, they say it's the best stadium you can play at. Now, they all poke jokes at UCLA, but you're talking about overall awareness. UCLA is getting the brand awareness out there with the new recruiting schematics of Deshaun Foster, right? He's going out there, and every 25 kid, every 26 kid, go look at 24/7 Sports on 3. You go look at Rivals. All these kids are saying UCLA's in the mix, and they're getting their hands deep in the waters of the recruiting trails, right? They are, after all the laughingstock that was Chip Kelly, the extra COVID protocols that they had to deal with here that the other parts of the country just didn't, all the other things, UCLA is getting back into it. And I think we're going to see a more energetic Rose Bowl. We're going to see more support. It's not going to mean they're 10-2 this year. It's not going to mean that they're going to be top 2 in the Big Ten Conference, but I beg to differ that if you look at a brand that they think is down, come on, UCLA's got some of the best uniforms. They've got a top-tier basketball transfer class. They got a women's team that's going good. And to say UCLA is going to be worse than Northwestern next year, I know Northwestern impressed with what happened in the previous summer, changing coaches and everything that happened over there. But you're telling me UCLA is worse than Minnesota, Illinois, Northwestern, right? You're telling me Washington's the 10th best team in this conference based on this? They've got Ohio State, Oregon, Penn State, Michigan, Iowa. That's your top 5 in this Big Ten quote-unquote media poll by Cleveland.com. All right. You're telling me UCLA is barely ahead of Michigan State, Indiana, and Purdue, right? All other programs that had head coaching switches, and behind Northwestern, who just officially hired their interim as a head coach. And a Minnesota coach that we're going to talk about in just the next segment, where he wanted to go to UCLA. We'll touch on that in a moment. Are you serious right now? What disrespect. I was sitting there out of the country, limited service. Didn't even see this post about how UCLA's not even in the national limelight. All right, yes. Has it fallen out? Have they fallen from superb graces? I don't think so. But the absolute quote-unquote social media attack there is unnecessary, right? That is just ridiculous, all right? I don't think they've been the laughing stock that the Lakers, the Cowboys, that Notre Dame at some point has been. Nebraska just hasn't really been relevant. I beg to say UCLA's been relevant in more ways than one than Nebraska has in a very long time. And remember, UCLA's got multiple sports to, they've competed. They've been closing in at some points in the top 25, top 10 in recent years under Chip Kelly, despite all the laughing, that teams have had. UCLA's been able to beat their rival in some big games. It's just frustrating. The Yankees, that team that hasn't done anything in forever, literally made a World Series in 15 years? Come on. The Canadians, long time? Okay. The Red Wings, who have literally fought, come on. This is a literal joke to include UCLA on this list. And we're going to have that talking to. I don't know who that is, but I'm frustrated. But then you talk about the media, and the first thing I see this morning, where I wasn't exactly going to talk about this topic today, I was planning on it this week because I missed it over the last couple of days, just returning on the crazy travel where all the flights were canceled. But I returned, and it's like, wait a minute, the Big Ten, the disrespect is real. And earlier in the summer, earlier in the spring, I talked about how Deshaun Foster is literally restoring respect. The Bruins literally have UCLA as a whole as a new chancellor who has proven he has a track record of showcasing support for football, for programs at Miami. That's a private institution. UCLA is a public UC, very different goals there, but you're going to get the support. UCLA has backed it up with Men of Westwood events, NIL support, donor support, showcasing that with winning Jay Tuia, bringing him back out of the portal from Texas to UCLA, that people have their eyes on UCLA's best players. Just like every program has their eyes on the best players in every other program. But they could win against Texas, about to go into SEC money and pluck one of their best players from the portal to come back to UCLA. You're telling me they lost their mystique? No. The hype is only getting. You might have to get up on the current ground floor, if you will, but I think we're going to hit a next level. Now, I'm not saying they're going to go win a national championship in college football. They're going to definitely compete in college basketball, and we're going to have a fun time talking about them in March of 25 this year with all the transfers that Mick Cronin's got, right? With an up-tempo, full-court press, defense, tenacious defense, much better, much more flattering offensive display than they had in 23 to 24. But this is a UCLA program, then the Big Ten is going to get more games watched, right? They're not going to be stuck behind a Pac-12 cloud. You talk about teams that lost in the mystique. Why would you say USC? What have they done in basketball? What have they really done in football other than choke? You're talking UCLA lost their mystique. I would like to say USC has lost their mystique, playing in a lame Duck Stadium. What have they really played for in recent years other than losing to Tulane in a New Year's Six Bowl with the defense that's been utterly atrocious, right? Wasting a number one pick's career. You're telling me UCLA's lost their mystique and you're not looking across town. I think UCLA is primed for a glow up and a big rise in national recognition now that they're going to a new conference that doesn't play their games behind literal paywalls. But we forget what UCLA can bring to the table. Much better than that school across town, those teams across town in most aspects. And I think we're about to see what UCLA is made for real. They've made the commitment. They made the jump. They know what it means. And I don't think it'll be as much of a laughing stock as literally this No Network's account has made it to be. The Big Ten media poll putting them at 15. It's from Cleveland.com, so it's not an official Big Ten media poll. Brett McMurphy tweeted it out. It's not an official one because they don't really have that at Big Ten media days. But it's about to start, and we're going to take a look later at what that means. Coming up next, There's literally a coach in the Big Ten who wanted to come to UCLA offseason. What are you talking about, PJ Fleck? Don't flex on us. I love sports. I love them so much, and I never want them to stop. Yes, we've got the Copas. They're done. The Euros are done. We got past the All-Star game part of the summer in Major League Baseball. But as playoffs have pretty much wound down, we're heading into the Olympics. We got fewer games. Although 2 weeks of sports that are just not like anything other. But the sports aren't going to be sportsing like we want them to as we trend into fall camp just before college football and the NFL season begins. But we're not there yet. But FanDuel lets you keep and lets me keep the sports going whenever I want because all I have to do is open the app and dream up bets anytime I'm in the mood. FanDuel is hooking up customers all the time, daily this summer, with a booster bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone, and you can start making the most of your summer with FanDuel.com. FanDuel, an official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. So over last week, I was trying to see, all right, what we can talk about when we get back here. Then utter quote-unquote social media attack against UCLA and the brands. And then you sit here, you see UCLA's pick to finish in the bottom 4 of the 18-team Big Ten. And now I'm wondering, hey, where's the disrespect? Whether it's the Locked On national accounts, whether it's the Big Ten media pool. And then I remember going over and seeing last week or so consistent pushing about how close, maybe not how close, that's not the right word I should say, how interested PJ Fleck from Minnesota was at coming to UCLA. And you're telling me that UCLA is doing worse than the Golden Gophers, who have to play their games in freezing weather 90% of the time, right? In Minnesota, who hasn't literally done anything in their college football lifetime, right? This is Minnesota, nice people, Golden Gophers, cool, but PJ Fleck was legitimately chasing UCLA. I'm looking at Mark Schipper, Fifth Down College Football, who I believe did go to UCLA. He's a big-time writer. Talked about how he was really connected, PJ Fleck was, the current coach of a Big Ten rival, right? All they just do in this day and age is they're going to go to interconference rivals when it comes to coaching changes. It's not across the country. It's inside your own conference. And Fleck thought about, hey, I'm going to get into UCLA. And apparently he's been connected to many schools when it comes to getting out of Minneapolis. But according to the post from Mark Schipper, Fifth Down College Football, it's that he wanted the UCLA job and that he wanted to stay with UCLA, didn't make the short list. We saw how happy the players were when it came to hiring Deshaun Foster, and that Fleck ended up talking about how much that he loved Minnesota and then how he turned down UCLA, when in reality, it turns out UCLA didn't even want him. You're talking like, hey, he was one of the more highly sought-after coaches a few years ago in the previous decade, and now you're telling me UCLA had the wherewithal to make it seem like we don't want him, even though he made a whole stunt, with his athletic director, everything, to go back to Minnesota and sit there and turn down that opportunity. If you add on to that I think, what was it, Tony Liebert tweeted, Schipper was replying, and this is a reporter saying from an anonymous Big Ten coach. I'm not sure if he got this quote from his report, but he did tweet out an anonymous Big Ten coach was quoted as saying, I think PJ Fleck chased UCLA and some other jobs pretty hard to get out of there. And it didn't happen for him. That means he was trying to literally get out of Minnesota, right? Literally get out of Minneapolis. And we're sitting here joking that nobody wants to come to UCLA. Don't let anybody tell you that's true. That is not true. Whether it's recruiting, coaching, fans, they want to support the Bruins. Coaches literally wanted to come to UCLA, unlike Chip Kelly, who probably never wanted to go to UCLA in the first place. And I thought there was some real hope there, as optimistic as it was, until I took my own blinders off and realized he was trash and they should have fired him at the Arizona State game. But Fleck came here, apparently, with an anonymous Big Ten coach saying he was trying to get out of Minneapolis, looked at UCLA, thought the glitz and the glamour, and UCLA either thought it wasn't a big fit, whatever it was, made a big show, big stunts. And it seemed like remember how UCLA fired Steve Alford basketball-wise? And they're trying to go after some big hitters. Mick Cronin wasn't even amongst the top 5, or maybe he was. I forget what it was in the time, but Mick Cronin wasn't widely applauded at the time. It was kind of thought UCLA missed out. That's how I felt at the time. And Mick Cronin has been, I think, a perfect fit for UCLA. Resurging the program's national identity, making the tournament, winning a Pac-12 title, making the Final Four, only to lose on one of the most iconic shots in tournament history, where they could have been competing for a national championship in the most recent years, getting a NIL boost in the main program at the university, getting the biggest program, the biggest boost into the most competitive, one of the most competitive conferences. And then you've got football, who's saying, hey, they were having to figure out, all right, all the big coaches are gone because they waited so long for Chip Kelly to leave, and now they didn't want Fleck. UCLA is at that point where they could turn down head coaches from the other Big Ten teams. At this point, it seems like, right? Where they got anonymous Big Ten coaches saying it, got Mark Schipper saying it. Man, UCLA, people want to be in Westwood. Now we just got to get people to Pasadena. All right. Now that's your job, the listener, the viewer, to get there and support. Maybe you're going to wear another team's colors in the Big Ten. All right. We want more blue and gold. But to say that UCLA is the absolute joke, it can be disappointing at times, but a literal absolute joke, I hesitate to agree with that notion. I just don't completely agree with it. I do believe UCLA has a lot to offer, whether it's recruits, student athletes, as less and less of that's becoming a true statement of a student athlete, and fans, coaches. You know, it's not SEC where they're going to throw all the money they want at you in the South, whether it's athlete, coach, assistant coach, endless amounts of scholarship, any spot you want, literally, as they go from this team to that team to go and get money or get paid or, you know, whatever. But there is something to be offered. And to show that UCLA was desired, right? If UCLA had literally fired Chip Kelly, right? If they'd fired Chip Kelly, think of all the other big-time coaches that would have been available. Now I'm really loving Deshaun Foster. He's been doing significant things recruiting-wise with his updated recruiting staff as detailed by the LA Times. They had the battle to get in the top 30, top 25 of recruiting rankings in the recent years. Mick Cronin has put UCLA basketball on the map. Jaime Hawkins is doing well in the pros. They're doing things at UCLA. And the women's team is, I think, pushing on the verge of a Final Four berth. Other teams are waiting right there, right? And you're trying to tell me, nah. This is real. UCLA is real. Now, they're not going to win a Big Ten title in their first year, maybe 2. But the way it stands, I think it will serve well for them. As much as we'll miss Pac-12 rivalries, they got the media rights deal at the right time. They're not getting the 10% little morsel of it. But they're making moves. They weren't reactive, they were proactive. And whatever you think of Martin Germain, that's what he's been saying. Proactive and not reactive. And I think UCLA has been proactive. They were reactive when it came to firing the coach. They was like, oh, my goodness. But they've been proactive now with this new staff, getting more talent on the basketball team. This is a program in athletics, overall institution, if you will, that is finding a way to move themselves in the right direction. All right. Speaking of moving in the right direction, NBA Summer League's coming to a close. Olympics are coming up. What does that mean? Well, some Bruins have made some big-time waves, signing some deals, making some plays after being out for a while. Let's talk about that next on Locked On UCLA. Well, to wrap up today's show, we're talking about what the Bruins have been doing in Summer League, right? This includes like Amari Bailey, Adem Bona, Jalen Clark, who finally got cleared for 5-on-5 contact. But what have they been doing, right? Let's catch you up on some of the Bruins who have not been as successful as Jaime Hawkins Jr. has been in their initial part of their NBA careers. Well, let's talk about Adem Bona because he's the biggest one earning a payday, right? And in the end, when you're getting to the NBA, some guys, that's all they care about. Some guys care about playing time. But for Bona, he chose to leave UCLA and make himself an NBA player, a prospect who was so tantalizing that if maybe he could have stayed one more year, would have been a first rounder. Mick Cronin was fairly confident. He had 3 NBA first rounders on his last team, which went under 500. And I believe those 3 were expected to be between a Berke and a Dye and a Dembona, right? And Bona ended up being the only one drafted so far, and he was a second rounder. Now, I think the Sixers are a good fit so far. Until recently, I don't think he had the best game lately, but close to his numbers are about 6 points per game, 6 boards a game, and 4 blocks in 22 minutes per game in the Summer League. Now, that's a lot of action. He's not going to be putting up 10 points per game, although the game he puts up 10 points is probably a game that the Sixers are going to win, or he's getting a lot of easy dunks. He's got 6 boards, which means he's hitting the boards, blocks. We've already known about his elite athleticism. People in the NBA this year are going to find out about 2 of UCLA's best defenders they have had in a long time. And because Jalen Clark, we'll talk about in a moment, tore his Achilles and was out all of last year, they're going to be so surprised that UCLA, if they had those 2 guys healthy in the 23 tournaments, probably go much further than a heartbreaking shot at the basic buzzer of Julian Strother to Gonzaga in the Sweet 16. Now I believe a tough day with UConn loom next, but I do think you give UCLA, Bona and Clark, that they probably make it to the national championship game. So everybody is going to remember who Jalen Clark is, because he would have been a first rounder or much higher second round pick if he wasn't hurt. Then you've got Bona, the reigning Pac-12 Defensive Player of the Year, who single-handedly, when he was out of foul trouble, would save UCLA's behinds so many times with his interior defense to save the penetration from the perimeter. So, one, he's showcasing his athleticism with those rim-rocking blocks, getting boards, and most importantly, a 4-year, $8 million rookie contract, according to Shams, right? So that means that's big news. Not sure if it's fully guaranteed. I didn't really see that part. But the big thing is that last year's a team option. The NBA has the second-round pick exception, which means there's a lot of lingo, yada, yada, yada. His last year's a team option. And that means big things. It means the Sixers are really looking at him as a viable option to probably get some minutes, much more than many second-round picks are, right? You don't just go and give your second-round pick 4 years, $8 million, right? Think of Amari Bailey. He's a second-rounder, and he's sitting there with the Clippers in the Summer League averaging 6 points per game, about 14 minutes a game, right? And you got Bona, who, yes, has sometimes been plagued with foul trouble issues and still will be, but he is so elite, so dynamic, so versatile defensively that he is a great off-the-bench option. He's that guy that's going to work so hard. Philadelphia is going to love him. The city of brotherly love is going to absolutely love Adem Bona. So finding that he's got a 4-year, $8 million contract going through Summer League is not a surprise. And even if for some reason he doesn't pan out in the Sixers, he's a guy I think that will float around the NBA and will find some traction at least into his early 30s. I'm fairly confident with Adem Bona on that. I'm not saying he's going to be a superstar if he doesn't develop his complete game, but he will be around the NBA for a while. And this signing of a contract is just something that is the first stage of that, right? And he's doing a little bit better than a previous second-round pick in Amari Bailey, who also is another guy that should have stayed one more year. Probably he was a guy, remember, he was a 5-star pickup by Mick Cronin, slowed by injury, had some big-time moments, including a forgotten 3 that he made in that miracle near comeback victory against Gonzaga in the Sweet 16, where he hit a big-time triple to give the Bruins the lead. But he just hasn't found the traction. And I think he truly needed Amari Bailey that extra year at UCLA, where he would have been the man in the final year of the Pac-12 and given them a true scoring option where this team just did not have it. They would have had a sophomore veteran option who was on a good team learning how to score and create, and instead he went to the pros. Now, I'm not sure where he's going to go with the Clippers. Of course, they're looking for spots after they couldn't keep Paul George and all those things. Speaking of Paul George, a Adem Bona combo right there. I'm not sure where Bailey's career is going to go, but he might be one of those late bloomers where he could have been those initial superstars because they didn't pan out in Charlotte. But I hope Bailey continues to progress. Now for Jalen Clark, who, if you're a non-UCLA fan, you've probably forgotten he existed or really didn't know he existed because not many people are aware of the National Defensive Player of the Year award as much as they are the Wooden Award. Guys who hit buzzer-beating threes in the tournament, a 7-10 Zach Edey. That's exaggeration, of course. But, guys who go and make big plays kind of forget about Jalen Clark, who did not play in the Pac-12 tournament that year, who did not play in the NCAA tournament, did not play a single game in the NBA last year, wasn't cleared for contact until recently in the middle of July. And now Jalen Clark, now that he's playing in what? I think I saw a tweet or something about in like less than 40 minutes of Summer League action, has like 9 steals, 10 steals, right? He was the National Player of the Year defensively. And if he could have stayed one more year, been healthy, UCLA would have been elite. But beyond that, it is somebody who is so good that I think the rest of the NBA is going to find out the 2 best defensive prospects of this year's rookie class of sorts is going to be the 2023 second-round pick for the T-Wolves, Jalen Clark, who's going to make Minnesota even that much more tough to score on. And then you've got Adem Bona, whose elite athleticism off the bench is going to be game-changing when both teams have their subs on the floor. All right? So I think those 2 guys who, when you think of Mick Cronin, preach guys, defense. Maybe they don't have the offensive acumen that a Hawkes does, or Clark could develop that a little more than Bona does because of his potential shooting ability. They are guys who, if you go defense, you go stay a couple years, 2-3 years. Clark blossomed in his junior year. Bona stayed the extra year, largely because of the labrum tear in his shoulder. But those combined, you stick together, you play defense, you're going to find a spot in the NBA. Clark is so dominant defensively, he is going to find minutes this year for the T-Wolves, who are borderline 1 seed in the West last year already. All right? Bona is going to find minutes on the team with Embiid and Drummond, right? He's going to find minutes with veteran big men who are elite because of his energy and enthusiasm and tenacious defense. So that is your update in the Summer League. Bona's got a contract 4 years, man. That's a big-time, life-changing contract. As much as we could have thrown an NIL package at Adem Bona, it's not topping that immediately. And that's not even the best of the best, but that is some life-changing initial pay they still got to earn, but he's doing some good things. And Clark, he's going to go surprise immediately. And we hope Bailey does some more as well, as Jules Bernard and Juzang also fight for G League and NBA roster spots as well. All right, that's going to do it for today's Locked On UCLA episode. Coming up, I want to keep on going. Let's discuss the recent commit who did not choose UCLA. We'll talk about that next episode. We'll talk about new portal commits for the Bruins and how's the progress of that Mata going in the summer. We'll talk about that and more on Locked On UCLA. Hands up, Bruins fans. 8 clap time, baby. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. UCLA. UCLA, fight, fight, fight. This has been Locked On UCLA. Zach signing off. Go Bruins.